As the leader of the UKIP group, Neil Hamilton.
Diane Abbott, the Shadow Home Secretary, has announced that Labour plans to recruit another 10,000 police officers in England and Wales, which would mean an extra nearly 1,000 in Wales. But she was rather sketchy about the cost of this proposal. First of all, announcing it was going to cost £300,000, which would be an average salary of £30 for a policeman. Secondly, it went up to £8,000 a year, £80 million. Perhaps the First Minister could give his own view of the credibility of this policy and what the actual figures are.
I think it's hugely important that we see more bobbies on the beat, more police officers, 10,000 of them. I think people will certainly support that. He asked the question, where does the money come from? Quite simple. £300 million a year over the course of 5 years. £2.7 billion is the pot of that will be created by reinstating the previous levels of capital gains tax. So £1.5 billion with £1.2 billion left over. Those are the maths.
Well, the First Minister is not aware of what happened last time capital gains tax was increased in 2010. Because in 2010, the rate of capital gains tax was raised from 18% to 28%. And whereas before the 23rd of June 2010, it raised £8.23 billion a year, after the 23rd of June 2010, it raised £3.3 billion a year. So actually there was a cut in the revenue of capital gains tax of £4.9 billion a year. So how is this increase in police numbers going to be paid for with reduced tax revenues?
No, it simply takes the rate back to what it was before, from 20 to 28 in the higher rate, and from 18 back from 20 rather to 28 on the higher level, and from 18 upwards on the lower level. That's the way in which this will be paid for. That simply means reinstating a tax rate that was there before, not something that is new.
The point I was making to the First Minister was, as a result of raising the rate of capital gains tax, the revenue raised from the tax fell, not increased. So, consequently, the tax base was reduced because people can postpone realising capital gains. In fact, the people who are most likely to want to realise capital gains are pensioners who can't afford to live on their incomes. So this is actually a tax increase which is aimed very largely at the people who can least afford to pay it. But perhaps it's part. Perhaps the illiterate financial plan that has been put before us by the Labour Party is part of the overall plan that he committed himself to in my presence in a television studio in Cardiff just a couple of weeks ago, of increasing borrowing by £500 billion a year. Does he really think that the credibility of the UK government in international financial markets is going to be enhanced by such a stupid policy?
Neil Hamilton and UKIP, soft on crime. You heard it here in this Assembly for the first time. Not supportive of policy to increase the number of bobbies on the beat, to increase the number of police officers in our communities. We've explained how this will be paid for by reinstating the previous rate of capital gains tax. I do not see his point about pensioners losing out because of capital gains tax. I don't know if he's talking about inheritance tax, so he's got the two confused, but I do not see how that works. Capital gains tax affects those people with most money. And it's only right that those people with most money are asked to pay more in order to fund our police officers on the street. There's never been a cheaper time to borrow money on the world financial markets. The Labour government of the 1940s did this, built the health service, built the welfare state, rebuilt the British economy from a far worse position than the Tories did. Individuals know that if you want to buy a house, you have a mortgage. You pay that mortgage off over 20 to 30 years. You have an asset at the end of it that you're able to use as you want. They don't understand that in the Conservative Party. A lot of them, of course, never had mortgages. They don't know what the concept is. The things given to them on a plate. So from our perspective, we know the public understand. You borrow in order to create an asset that is then worth far more. That works for individuals, it will work for Britain, and that's the kind of vision we want, a vision that rebuilds Britain, not one that lets it drift.